So my name's Jason Graves. I'm a composer for video games, among other things, and I was in Montreal this week talking about Dead Space and specifically interactive music in general in games. Originally, one of the things that I think made the audio for Dead Space so spectacular is the audio director himself, Don Vecca, had a great vision from the beginning of the game. Number one, how important audio would play in the game itself, and number two, specifically how the music should sound. We went through a lot of different revisions at first on the music and how Hollywood or action sounding it could be versus visceral and kind of grab you by the throat. We ended up settling on the latter, just because the action element, why it sounded scary and all that kind of stuff on its own, when you played it in the game, it instilled a sense of confidence in the player that we didn't want. And this was Don's decision, because I was only doing what he asked. And he said, you were only doing what I asked, but that's not what we need. And the final decision was to strip away all the Hollywood elements, all the slick elements, all the high-quality production as far as synthesizers and drums and stuff like that, and just get visceral orchestra, just churning away, and go for a more textural approach that would immediately grab your attention and also not get old. And that's a really hard combination to find. The beauty of horror music is it's so textural and dissonant. You can do a lot with it, and it doesn't sound the same all the time. So we could do these textures that play in the background. I mean, music plays when you're in zero gravity, there's no music, but pretty much every other time when you're in the game, it's playing, even if you don't realize it. It's this real textural kind of thing that's going on that just gives you this creepy vibe, even if you're not aware it's there. And that was our goal, was to make more of a sound design based score. Oh, and again, that was something that Don, from the beginning, knew how he wanted to implement the music. Now, I'm the one that composed it all, but he's the one that implemented it all. And the fact that it was interactive basically automatically lent itself to not being repetitive, because we would do 2-minute pieces of music that had 4 individual layers in them. And the idea is the levels are based on intensity of gameplay. So unless you're just standing still in the hallway, not moving, you're not really going to notice a 2-minute music loop playing, because you're going to have one of those 4 levels coming up, going down, percolating in and out. And it was composed in such a way that if you turned everything off, you just listened to the music and you walked through and played the game for 10 minutes, even if it stayed on the same 2-minute piece, you're hearing something different all the time, because you're hearing different points of those 4 tracks poking up and going down, and it really does sound like an interactive score. And as a result of being so interactive, it's not repetitive. Occasionally I would do something where maybe there was some harmony that was in tune with other things, but for the most part it was the complete opposite. We were able to, I'd even do rhythms that were counterintuitive to each other on purpose, and either they would stack on top and play at the same time and be this complete cacophony, or it would switch instantly from one to the other, and it sounded like the music would go faster or slower or get more intense. So it was a combination. I had a choice of either having all those 4 layers stack up as maybe you got closer to a monster or closer to something that was supposed to be scary, or I could have it do a switch. And I could customize, for every piece of music I could customize that. So I would write the music with that in mind. A lot of times it was Deconstruction. I'd write a really big over-the-top combat piece, and then I'd start stripping things away, and that's how I would get the different layers. It's a lot of time, and the really hard part was doing the 4th layer, which was like the crazy orchestra layer, and a lot of time it was just just the loudest. The orchestra's playing as loud as they possibly can for these long sustained notes, and it's really hard to listen to. And in the game it works. There's a lot of stuff going on, but when you're just focused on the sound for 2 minutes, it starts to get a little monotonous sometimes. But I mean, it worked in the game, and that's what's really important. And it was the nice thing about Dead Space. I was brought in so early on. I mean, they didn't even have an official green light to produce the game yet. But this vertical slice that they were going to do, which is basically like a sample of gameplay, everything's finished, right? The music's finished, the audio, the design, everything's finished. So basically, press or the executive producer or whoever could sit down and play it and go, oh wow, that's really cool. So I had, for that little snippet of maybe 10 minutes of gameplay, I had finished artwork, and I could walk through and play the game, and especially seeing the set design, seeing how beautiful it was. I mean, they were inspired a lot from Alien and Aliens and Event Horizon, but especially for the creepy stuff, for the ambient creepy stuff, that helped me figure out what the music was supposed to sound like a lot. I mean, there was general ideas from Don, the audio director. We want to do stuff that's more textural. We don't want to have a lot of melody, but he kind of left it up to me to figure out exactly how that was supposed to be done. So having the visual stimuli, that was how I determined, oh, I could see like this would work, this kind of low drone that the orchestra doing when having, little creepy things coming in and out, and it definitely plays a large role in the quiet stuff for sure. And then, when you see this gruesome monster attacking you, that helps with the big over-the-top stuff too. I almost feel like a preacher, because all I talk about is implementation and how important it is, no matter what your software limits are or your budget limits are, to really maximize your music and implement it as properly as you can within your any given platform. Now with Dead Space, we had the luxury of having a custom built, custom scripted interactive music engine. That's why we got the 4 layers. On top of those 4 layers, we can stream something else from RAMs. We've got stingers. I mean, it was a really powerful engine. Now there's some other games I've worked in, the music's just as interactive, but it's done with blocks of music instead. So every game is totally different. I mean, in my experience, usually it's the bigger games with the bigger budgets that have the ability to implement the interactive music. I mean, the idea is great, but then you have to have someone script it, you have to have someone implement it, and it all costs money. So I'm still doing some games that are, start, stop. That's pretty much it. Play a win stinger, play a lose stinger. But I have seen, more games are getting into interactive stuff, and to me, that's the way of the future. I mean, the consoles can finally support it at least. With the PS3 and the Xbox 360, I couldn't believe how good the game looked on the PS3. It looked fantastic, and then they've got all those streams of music playing. I know we did Dead Space Extraction. Everyone said that you could only do stereo music on the Wii, and that's the first game. We have 4 layers of music playing. And the interactive engines, they adapted their engine for the Wii. I mean, so the technology's there. You just got to, put the resources in it, and people need to place an emphasis more, I think, on music and how much it impacts the players.